Okay, we got a few people still trickling in, but I'm about ready to get started. Is everybody ready? Yeah, you're in the right room. You recognize the title? All right. What's Red Hat? Good. Good question. My name is Eric Chabelle. I'm a Global Technology Evangelist Director at Red Hat. Spent a lot of time at Red Hat. I've been here 9 years. Seen us grow quite a bit, seen our customers grow quite a bit, and wanted to introduce this talk a little bit differently than I normally would do in a talk, because this talk started quite a while ago with a phone call with this guy. It's a friend of mine. This is Roel Hasselmans. We worked together as developers a long time ago. He came into Red Hat, took over one of the positions that I used to have at Red Hat. He continued on with a lot of the customers in the area that we're from in the Netherlands. And we were having a phone conversation about some of these things that kind of frustrate customers, frustrate us, things that seem kind of obvious, but a lot of people don't seem to be getting. And to be really honest, I know that none of this is going to apply to you guys. You have this all figured out and everything's just going really great. You're just here to make sure, right, that you didn't miss anything. So we were talking, and the list is, believe me, much longer than 3. But we decided to narrow this down to something that's a little bit more consumable. The top 3, they're interesting enough. We have enough data around them. We've talked to enough customers. We've been involved with enough customers that we can back up some of this stuff. And I trial ran this at our own internal sales kickoff to see what the people that talk to the customers, the sales, the field, the technical guys, what they were encountering. This is a special session also where you're going to require a telephone. So please get your phone out or use your laptop if you're connected, because we're going to have some questions you're going to answer as we go through this. We'll present the results at the end. So there's data we gathered along the way that pretty much proved what we were talking about and supports some of the things we're talking about that a lot of people are not actually aware of or taking these seriously enough as they go towards the cloud. Yeah, so I'm going to let Roel introduce himself here a little bit too, so you get to see who he is.
Okay.
Before we get started.
Thanks. So I'm Roel Hasselmans. I work as a Red Hat, as Eric said, for 6 years now at Red Hat as a solution architect, responsible for, well, it started off as a JBoss first and maybe a little bit of OpenShift. Currently it's just OpenShift all the way for me. Probably the same for you guys, right? It's all over the conference. And this is why I speak to a lot of customers. Actually, the customers here right in the front are people from Schiphol, which is actually one of our key use cases of hybrid multi-cloud. So if you have any questions, don't ask me, ask them. And that's my introduction. Eric, the floor is yours.
Okay, before I get started on exactly what we're going to cover here and stuff, I'd like to see a show of hands so I have an idea of who I'm actually talking to. Developers in the room? Architects that are responsible for this kind of stuff? Yeah, I would expect that's most. Anybody C-level? Like CIOs, CTOs, CMOs, COOs, whatever else I missed. Any press? Any analysts? All right, it's brave to raise your hand. All right, that gives me an idea of what we're talking about here. So we have 3 things we're going to hit. These are not everything. These are not maybe your top 3, but these are the ones that we felt were the easiest ones to touch on, to be really clear about, to provide really good examples around. First one being that cost is not always generally the obvious motivator to get you to go into the cloud. It shouldn't be your all-seeking goal to save money. That's not always. There's a lot of hidden stuff you're going to discover with cost. The second thing we're going to talk about is moving technology into the cloud, whether you're doing that in containers or not. Do we want to move everything? What is a good idea to move? That kind of idea, and some thoughts around that. And the final one is your data. Moving data into the cloud is actually, I got data. I can't emphasize that one enough. We have some pretty cool examples about that. But before we get started, I know you're seeing in the title that we used a little bit of that BS bingo, where we have hybrid, multi-cloud, and we're trying to touch on all these things so that we can get your attention, right, and get selected for these conferences. But what is a multi-cloud? Now, I wanted to put a definition up so at least we're all on the same page as far as what I'm talking about with multi-cloud. So this can be seen as something that is using different public clouds. Could also be a private cloud. But think of channeling it sort of like a vertical. So there's not a lot of intercommunication, there's not orchestration and stuff like that. It's going to look a little bit like this.
Before I forget, I see people taking pictures of the slides. Actually, Eric put the slides up on his blog. If you just do a plug of yourself for a second.
Oh yeah, so if you go to chabelle.org, you'll find these things online. It's already available. So you don't have to wait for the conference to put them online. I usually get that question by the end of the thing anyway, so that's why I started doing that. I time it to post it. Back to multi-cloud. So you see here we're talking like you have stuff either in public clouds, maybe on your own container platform, or in some kind of private cloud you set up that's not interacting with each other. You have applications that are fairly siloed on these things, or you're leveraging specific functionality inside that cloud. Think of some of the serverless stuff or the function-based stuff that you can do. Then we bring in the hybrid stuff. We haven't talked about that enough already this week, but hybrid cloud is about being able to cross those borders and make this stuff painless, right? That you can find the services in the various areas, cloud bursting, things like that. When we start looking at our infrastructure that spans multiple types of clouds, so taking that multi stuff further than just individual functions and stuff, being able to actually execute across this stuff as is needed, to be smarter about it, cheaper about it. That's our plan in our mind, right? That's what we're trying to do. So what would something like that look like? Okay, we mapped Red Hat type of functionality into this. Whether it's an OpenStack private cloud, whether we're talking about an Azure or an AWS, or we're looking at anything out there that we might be using, a little bit of integration across there, Fuse for our services, putting all those microservices together, and our apps are able to interact with all this stuff without a problem. And our maintainability and our analytics are able to, or our management software, excuse me, are able to react to problems and to burst into the right regions, into the right clouds, and take action. Everybody has this dream, right? Has anybody achieved this yet? You never know. Maybe one of you got the secret. You share it with all of us.
Well, we did in the keynote demo, right?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Okay, then I'm going to hand this off to Roel, and he'll take you through a little bit of what the cost motivation is.
Yeah, as we said, we wanted to be a little bit more interactive and also present the results of this session back to you guys and gals, obviously. So we've introduced a series of poll questions. So you either scan the QR code or go to the small link and you'll get a Google form. Please don't go all the way in the form. We will tell the story first, but you can answer the questions as they come up. And actually, our first question is cost a factor in your company's journey to the cloud?
These are anonymous. We're not tracking who you are when you say this, so you're not giving away your company secrets.
No. I wish. It'd make my life so much easier. Hey, but let's start off with the first one, migrating to cloud. So what we actually found out is that it's rare for people to be aware which costs are associated to running into the cloud. And one of the ones that I personally seen, and Eric as well, is missed a lot out on is labor cost. And we've put in Forrester research here to put in some research on this topic. And 50% of the public cloud migration costs are labor costs. And please be aware, these are labor costs just for the migration itself. The cost you spend on your labor force being enabled to run a cloud native workload, for instance, if you have an old school developer that always run a 3-tier web application and now needs to build a 12-factor app with Istio because that solves a lot of boilerplate problems, that's not in there. It's just pure labor cost. And to put it in perspective, I have a utility company in the Netherlands that wants to go full into the cloud by 2020. No data center at all. Yeah? Issue so far, moving isn't all just that effective. And what they now did is they said, okay, we're going to do everything as a SaaS. And that basically meant that even HR processes, which were customized for that organization, was completely SaaSified, which had the downside that they did no customization. So everything that they had on specific bonuses and specific things for their workforce, they had to go back to the standard, except for those systems functions that hit their customer base. They said the only place where we want to distinguish ourselves is where we hit our customers.
And think also, how many people here are operators or on the admin side of the house? They always forget about you, right? What
Yeah.
about training you up to deal with what's coming over to your side of the fence? How are you going to monitor this? How are you going to manage this? What are containers? How do I do that?
Yeah. And actually that's a good point, because in the next slide is what we found out is that, I mean, we have 80% overcapacity in our own data centers, right? Who were here last year? Seriously, no one? Wow. We're doing something right. There's keep coming in new people. So last year there was a guy from the Deutsche Bank. I respect him very much. I think he has a great vision. It's called Pat Healy. He calls himself 3PO because he's third level CTO there. And he's awesome. And he told us that when he joined Deutsche Bank, he found out that they had single digit utilization on their servers. Single digit. Yeah? Can you imagine how much money that was wasted? And the reason why was, well, there were multiple reasons, but the major reason he found out was that the process to order new hardware was so fraught with red tape and everything around it, that it took them such a big effort that everybody just over-ordered, right? And you can arguably saying, yeah, but we'll do this in the cloud. We'll just buy what we need, right? How many people think that you just buy what you need in the cloud?
It just carries over. It just carries over. The same pattern happens for ordering.
Exactly.
In the cloud.
What we found out is that there's no process in place to see where people are over-ordering. If Pat didn't check inside his organization, he wouldn't have known. How do you think that will happen in the cloud? So we have all kinds of developers, DevOps organization, I hope. People are ordering stuff themselves and there's no process to downscale. Do you think it will be going better? I don't. Actually, I saw in practice that it doesn't happen.
Here's kind of a funny one too. Is anybody here responsible for doing like demos or anything like that to somebody in their organization, and they play a little bit with like AWS resources? Are you looking at all about how you use that resource? Of course not. You're ordering those templated versions that they'll sell you and probably utilizing single digits.
Yeah.
Another example of the same problem.
Yeah. And that actually comes into the fact that we're overpaying. We're actually overpaying in-house, but we're also overpaying in the cloud. And how many people are actually in one or more clouds? Oh, quite a few of you. Okay. How many did start small?
Only two?
That's a little bit more.
Yeah,
People are
smaller,
shy.
yeah.
You're shy. Yeah, I get that. I have the same. But the issue is, if you start small, hammering out a good agreement with your cloud provider is going to be tricky, and you have to do it later. So especially the first costs are typically well overpaid. And one of the insurance companies we know, which is actually one of the biggest in EMEA, they said, we're going to go nice and agnostic into the cloud. And they kept that at for 3 months, and then they started to use the first functionality. And what they found out is that particular cloud provider, and we're totally willing to name them afterwards for beer, but not here, said that up until 1 million spend per year, they were absolutely unreachable. From 1 million to 10 million, they were calling daily. Do you need something more? Do I need to help you? After 10 million, they never called again. You couldn't go anyway. And it's actual fact. The only reason why they are finding out that the move to public cloud was cheaper for them.
So think about this. From 1 million to 10 million, you have their full undivided attention. Now, you're their special child of the week. Once you hit 10 million, they won't pick up the phone.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Yeah, not very special, right?
Yeah.
But what I wanted to mention before my computer started messing up is that the only reason why they found out that it was still cheaper for them to run public cloud was that they nixed some of their labor force. They maintained their 10 million environment with 3 script kiddies instead of 25 Linux engineers, which is a bad thing, because let's be honest, if they have to move, those 3 script kiddies won't help them, right? But fact of life. So, second point on our list, everything in the cloud. So we talked about the example I just gave for the utilities company who's putting everything in the cloud. So we thought we'd ask you guys and gals, will your organization move everything to the cloud?
Everybody got it? The URL now? Okay.
Yeah.
I know we're kind of quick, but it keeps coming back, trust me.
Yeah, we'll keep going back. And what we found out is actually that might not be viable at all. So one of the Dutch organizations I speak to is an online travel company that has 40,000 physical servers. They're not moving to the cloud. They buy resource capability by data center, not even by rack. So what we see is that there are issues beyond, obviously we're all talking about data ownership. Obviously we have some political situations and geopolitical situations where people don't trust each other that well, and data ownership is an issue. But that's the one we're all aware. But even if you look into things like the labor cost we just mentioned, or the cost of ownership into public cloud services, or the overpaying you're doing, it's actually, we found out that moving to the cloud isn't always as viable as it first seems. Obviously, that does not mean that you can't make the business case. Jim speak this morning, on yesterday morning, about the need to be flexible, to need to put into account business demands and people that disrupt the mark, like the Ubers did and the Netflix. We all know the standard examples. So you still can make a business case on that you move. But did you think of everything? And that's why it's probably not viable. And I have an example of that. I need to put an asterisk in this one. It might be a little bit sensitive for people. I don't know if people have lost members to terrorism, where this is an example of. But it is a use case that I wanted to use to illustrate this point.
Do we have any French people here in the audience? Anybody from Paris? Is anybody familiar with this event? This was the first big thing since 9/11 that happened in Europe. Terrorist attack in Paris, downtown there. Very vicious, very graphic.
Yeah, so the issue was there was people that made some comics about the Prophet of Muhammad, and there were unfortunately some people that took that really bad, and they murdered some people. That was awful, obviously, but it also showed a specific use case, and this is actually the customer themselves spoke about it on a Power to Innovate event that we did in the Benelux. And how many people know that Belgium has actually 3 languages spoken in there? Some of you. Okay, cool.
So let's set the scene here a little bit. So you're in Paris and you're trying to figure out what's going on. You're locked down, just like the stuff that happened at the Boston Marathon. You don't know what's going on. You're hearing gunshots around the city. It's crazy. So you're trying to get news, right? In America, we have tons and tons of news sites. You can go all over the place. There's about 0 chance you're going to flood a news site. French-speaking news locally, there was 2 big ones, and they flooded them. So where do they go? The only place they can go is to the French-speaking part of Belgium. And that's this story.
Yeah, and the Preclude is one of the biggest publishing houses in Belgium, and they started with feeling the pain within seconds. And I got here the stats they presented themselves, and the numbers itself, obviously for American terms and probably for Chinese as well and India, these are not big numbers, but for a company that is running their own data centers and had to increase their load, or had increased their load on their websites with unique visitors by 60% or 99% in some cases, I mean, that's a big hit. And the CIO of that company used this particular example saying that we can't go to the cloud, not in particular about that we can't host our service on the cloud or that we can't do it almost equally as efficient, but the bandwidth costs that they had to pay just for the normal operations, let alone these kind of operations, would have nixed them.
This
They would have been out of business.
bankrupt the group, not the company, the group.
The group would have been bankrupted. So, okay, this is a painful example, and I get that, but this is a fact of life that we need to deal with. Obviously, we all want to be more like Nintendo, that they had or no, it wasn't Nintendo, the Pokemon Go stuff, or it wasn't Nintendo. I don't know, I'm not good at that. Oh, it wasn't. Okay, cheers. But obviously, that we want a positive thing to be the reason of why our traffic is exploding, but it is something to take into account. And obviously, I've spoken to quite a few customers, both in banking, retail, you name it. This is actually a point that nobody thinks of. And to make that point a little bit more aware is the third question we want to ask you. Are you aware of the behavior of your normal applications? Do you have a baseline?
Does anybody here have one?
I think this is a painful question, this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, sorry?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good answer.
True, true. Actually, that's part of, this is a list of 10 bullet points that you could do when you go to the cloud. It's not exhaustive, but it is one of the better ones I found. And I like that you have at least a profile for the business critical applications. I found out that you're a rarity, unfortunately. Customers do have baselines on behavioral stuff, like we see about this much traffic, but not on compute resources, on networking consumption of that particular app. We don't typically see that what's the worst case scenarios. If there is a baseline, it's not very exhaustive. And it works the other way around. Remember the labor cost I just mentioned? When I got a question from one of the Dutch banks and said, listen, we want to go to the cloud because we want to accelerate. And I said, fine, I can see your point. There's a lot of red tape in your organization. You might be well suited to go to the cloud. But when I asked, so which areas do you want to accelerate? Yeah, we want to go to the cloud. Yeah, that's not what I asked. That's not what I asked. And I get occasionally you need to make hard decisions and you need to go for a vision, but it would be nice if you have some facts to go with them. And honestly, maybe the Netherlands is a little bit hindsighted and we're not that advanced as we think. But be honest to yourself. You don't have these problems, obviously. But I think there's a lot of organizations that still have, right?
Also, really quickly before you move this one on, think about what number 11 might be.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that.
Okay. Cool. Do you need a container to be successful? I sell OpenShift. I obviously say yes, and you need a Red Hat OpenShift to do so. Now, let's be honest, right? We run into these kind of situations. We cram the monolith into a container called a microservice.
Yeah, and honestly, let's be honest though. This is kind of early day reactions, right? That's what everybody tried in the beginning. The container's going to fix it all.
Yeah, and I get that. And obviously there are use cases. Listen, I tell my customers, in the end, the container is nothing more than a Linux process. So if you have a particular application that benefits from single method of deployment, of having a system that keeps the lights on by itself instead of that you need to do it manually, that reboots something and when it goes down, that maybe moves the workload when it goes down. Even a big monolith inside a container can make sense. So we actually have a customer in the Nordics that is running an Oracle database inside a container. It's not the most typical workload. It required a little bit of help, but it is something that is actually live today. Just one thing I want to mention. If you put a mess into if you make a dumpster fire into a container, it's still a fire. And it's still an issue. And you see the small guys in the trying to.
So when you pile a bunch of containers together and you got a few dumpster fires in there, what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Makes it hard.
A mess in a container is still a mess.
And did we train our operations guys up on how to deal with this anyway?
Did we give them the tools at all?
Yeah.
Do you have monitoring in place? Do you have something that is security scanning this stuff? One of the things and probably, again, you guys have this covered, a DevOps organization hopefully also has included their security operations, DevSecOps, or even BizDevSec, blah 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 ops. It's basically we need to work together. Security isn't always in there. Please, 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 please do be aware if you put a mess in a container and you split, and even if you split it off in a 12-factor app, you have 12 messes. Yeah? Please be aware of this one. And I wanted to mention some other thing. So it's getting a little bit less. I see more and more managed services now pop up in our customer conversations. But if you do it yourself, it's not always better.
And I'm telling you, there must be somebody here from the South that's got one of these, right? I lived in North Carolina for a year over here with my family, and I swear I've seen this going down the road.
Yeah. We got about 300 to 400 people working on our cloud system just on OpenShift, let alone all the other bits. You need to be aware of the engineering efforts that's involved in getting this stuff to run in any shape, manner, or form of close to frictionless, or at least as frictionless as we can.
And I'm very confident that you're able to put together that first setup, but when it starts needing to be updated and that needs to be upgraded, it needs to be, then things start, you this knob and that falls over, and I've been there. That's tough.
Yeah. The one thing I do want to mention that Cloud Do-It-Yourself is a very attractive proposition if you want to learn. Just think about how much you want to spend on that learning. Yeah. And with that, the floor is yours again.
Okay. Now we're going to go into the data. So how many people here are putting data in the cloud and want to admit it? Okay. Is all of it in the cloud? Are you just doing data by your apps in the cloud? And pulling it out as fast as you can and store it someplace important? Does your data have meaning to you? Most places, that's your IP. This is what you do. This is your interaction with your customers. This is the most valuable piece of whatever in your company, outside of you, of course. But your company's going to be thinking that's way more important than anything else, right? So this is something that you really, really need to think about. So not only do we have to worry about where our data is, how much data are you pushing? Kind of get the hint out of this question. The bandwidth is expensive, right? Remember the example we gave? If they'd have been in the cloud with all that bandwidth, it'd been hosed. So how much data are you moving around? Are you caching it in 2 different clouds? Are you pumping all that to 2 different places? Apparently there's all kinds of savings to be had in there, but there's a lot of cases where very few companies would actually profit from it. And there's a lot of reasons behind the scenes why, and the biggest one I just touched on was the IP. Think about this example. I can't name the company, but imagine a retailer, supermarkets, worldwide, probably in the top 8 or 10, for sure. All over the world, he's busy and stuff, and what do supermarkets do? They give you free Wi-Fi, they track your experience, they have these really cool scanners you can carry around and price all your shit yourself, you don't have to stand in line. All this stuff is gathering information about how long you stop in front of a product, what shelf you're pulling stuff up. I mean, this is key stuff. This is core business for you to figure out what to put where and to make the most money, right? Constantly running your data analytics over that stuff to figure out better ways to get more money out of your customers, get them to buy more stuff, get them to come into the store. They were going to go into the cloud too with everything, data, all of it, right? And their cloud provider just happened to buy Amazon Whole Foods. And the CEO of this company said, oh, full stop. Biggest company in the world is now also in the same business I'm in, and I'm going to put my data in his cloud. That's not going to happen. Said full stop. No data in that cloud whatsoever. And it was pretty timely too, because it happened right around all those Facebook issues. So privacy is really important. Yeah, we promise not to look at your data. I don't think I'm going to trust that provider to not look at my data, right? Why would you risk your billion-dollar business on something like that? That's just your core stuff. So you're going to see an awful lot of people that are very much about putting apps that, of course, interacts with data, collects data, does stuff with data, but you're getting it out of there as fast as you can, and you're not running any kind of analytics in the cloud over that. Let's be honest, if you're doing serious analytics and data, big data stuff, most of that requires special hardware anyway, right? You might have a little small private cloud somewhere that you're doing this stuff in. So think about that.
And the one thing I wanted to add to this as well, one of the major issues we're facing, and it's actually an issue that we also have with a twin data center or even a triple data center setup you have yourself, right? Everybody aware of the CAP theorem? If not, you should look it up. It's consistency, availability, and partitioning of data. It's mathematically proven to be that you're not able to be consistent and available. Think of how big of an issue it is if you go hybrid multi-cloud and you're going to do writes. I mean, for a read, you can get a long way, but for writes, it's going to be an issue, right? And that was not an intended pun.
Okay. I think this is one of our last questions.
Yep.
Going back to question number 11 on that list, did this enter your mind at all in this talk so far? Did anybody actually physically think about this when I was mentioning all this stuff and when he was talking? Did you really think about what's my exit strategy? I hope your company did. Remember the 1 billion to 10 billion and all of a sudden they're not calling no more? That person's thinking about an exit strategy. You know why they're not calling? They know you don't have one, right? It makes it rough. They know they got you. You're using all that special stuff they offer. You're using those lambdas. You're using all this cool stuff they offer. Now you can't extract it. That makes the things that we announced this week huge, right? Being able to run your workloads from IBM in a container. That means I don't care where I host it, what cloud it looks like. It's in a container. They'll support me on that. You look at the Microsoft announcement, being able to do the same thing all over the place. This is huge. It kind of makes this a non-issue, right? You're trying to set up and have that question answered before I even start.
Except for the data.
But it's movable, right? Like he was talking also about putting that whole Oracle database into a container. I'm not saying put it in a public cloud, but you can move it around at will once it's in that container. Also something you might want to think about is these exit strategies. These are huge, right? How many people have been in IT longer than 10 years? Was there a container 10 years ago?
Yeah. There was.
You know what I'm saying though? Will there be one in 5 years? Will there be one in 20 years? Who here is responsible for an architecture and has to write a 3 or 5 year plan? When you get to the end of your 3 or 5 year plan, are you still on plan? You're writing the new one, right? As fast as you can. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's a reality of our business, right? A great attribute of what's going on in open source, why so many people are here, why so many people are interested in it, it's standards based. At least you have some hope of being able to swap out components in an architecture on the base of your standards. You're hoping. Right? Not always true, but you know, most of the time we're pretty good at that. All right, what's next?
We're going to see what.
Well, let's give you a chance to finish up. Did everybody get a chance to finish up the questions? All right, we're going to give you a live look at what you told us.
Let's zoom out a little bit.
Get to the results.
Where is it? Oh, sorry. So, my dear people in the audience, 52 of you responded. Is it readable? No, I'll make it a little bit bigger.
52, that's really good. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. So, is cost a factor in your company's journey to the cloud? Yes, overwhelmingly so.
You know what's funny about this? This looks probably almost exactly the same as when I asked it at 2 different groups of different sizes and different organizations.
Oh, let's see. Let's see.
Yeah, flip over to the...
So you're a little bit more conservative than the SKO guys or the sales kickoff, so the Red Hat internal event.
So this is sales talking about what they're encountering in their accounts.
Yeah. Second question, will your company move everything to the cloud? Thank God. You're aware. No. Honestly,
Has anybody here been involved where they said we're going all in and then they backed off?
yeah,
Pretty
see.
cool, yeah, yeah. Anything, you recognize any of this story? You've been there.
Actually, you need to talk to your sales reps, see, who has 20% that has no clue. Please tell them.
To be fair, that no clue could mean anything. They may not be involved in those discussions. So
Yeah, always.
it's not really fair.
So baseline, actually, this is a really interesting one. The gentleman in the back probably mentioned it the best, right? We have a partially for some applications. How partial? Because that partial can bite you somewhere where you don't like it. Still people that say, what's baseline? Honestly? Really? No, I didn't do my job right. Obviously, whoever filled in yes, I want to speak to you. I want to run on your
Who said
account.
yes? Raise your hand.
No, it was
No,
anonymous.
just kidding.
Just
We should also say none of this is super scientific, right? We're just giving you a feel. You get a little bit of insight of what happened in the room, what people are sharing.
Yeah.
Don't bet your life on this one.
Yeah. Do you need a container to be successful? Nice. Nice. I didn't expect that one, to be honest. Obviously, containers will help. Containers will, by its very promise, and especially if you look at the Open Container Initiative, where we're talking about universal portable containers, then containers will help.
Look at the SKO one. Let's see what they said.
So in Red Hat, we're kind of a little biased, apparently.
We're all in.
We're all in on this stuff.
Well, this isn't just us. This was representative of the accounts that they're in. So
Yeah,
their
true.
customers, what they're seeing.
What they're seeing, yeah.
So maybe they're lying to us.
Yeah, maybe.
You guys tell a different story.
Yeah. And does your company know your bandwidth and storage need? No, but we can find out. It's 32.7%.
I love that one. Everybody's optimistic.
Yeah. How much red tape does that require? No? Probably a lot, right?
Is this interesting? This is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. If we look at, no, but we can find out. So again, talk to your Red Hat rep. Apparently we don't know. No, just joking. And the bonus question, does your company have an exit strategy? 52% says no, we don't. Wow. And this actually applies to your favorite hoster as well, right? It does not just apply to the public clouds as we know them, like the AWS, Google, and Microsoft Azure's bit. Doesn't matter. If you go somewhere, if you choose a bit of technology, make sure that you have some kind of exit strategy. And please, for the love of God, try it at least once. Yes, thank you. Then I already did my job.
We will leave this online for a little bit longer, probably through the end of this week.
Yeah.
So if you've got other friends and stuff you want to point at this to put some answers into, feel free. If you want a copy of this, I'm more than willing to send it to you. You just need to send an email or something to me or to Rule.